Hello and welcome back to my garage, where you're slowly watching, and I mean really slowly watching, me rebuild an RZ250, a 1986 model. This week it's just a few bits and bobs, not much. Restore the ignition barrel because it's been bashed about a bit, and just quickly give the throttle cables a good clean and see if they're okay to be reused. Alright, straight into it. Next up is the ignition barrel. It's been pretty well bashed up over the years, as they all were. So we'll try and take this apart, like I say, get a decal for the ignition positions and paint this all up. Now it's got security bolts in here, much like these were on the headstock. So I've got to drill out these two little rivets, I suppose you call them, and hopefully that'll separate. Just hope they're threaded into here. If not, we need a new ignition barrel. It's difficult to drill because they're on a conical point. I might have to try a really small drill and just start opening it up, because with it being a pyramid, the drill wants to wander off. Plan is not to drill all the way through, obviously. We just want to take the head off so the cap can come off. So only drill as wide as we can, just to remove as much of the rivet as possible. Yeah, there we go. It's come off like a rivet. You could see me twisting the drill at funny angles. That's because it's just wandering. Like this back one here decided to wander off a bit. So I'm going to have to be a bit medieval with the drill. There we go. Same again, it's just come off like a rivet. They're both drilled out now, and it feels like it will separate. Okay. Looks self-explanatory. Looks like they only go in one way. The little cutouts are slightly different sizes. You can see down in the barrel, that's a thin one, that's a slightly thicker one, so it'll only go in one way, which is good. Helps orientation. And then we've got two little screws. Whee, and everything falls out. So there's a little spring that goes down in the side there. Now, unfortunately, that's a bugger that when I tipped it up, because now I don't know which way round at 180 degrees. Is it that way or that way? So I'm going to need to see how that works in terms of the lock. So again, that can only go on one way. And I suspect, looking at that pin in there, goes in there. But given that was like, that goes on there. Yeah. So that is the orientation. That pin has to be up at the 1 o'clock. So help me reassemble. Take the spring out. Now I don't really need to take any more out, because I think we could probably spray this up. And then what I'll do is just remove these two threads. I won't be putting back tamper-proof bolts. I'll just put in a normal Allen socket head screws. Oh, looks like that could come out. Pin, oi, and there's a spring and a ball bearing. Ah, great. This'll do. That sits like that. And tiny ball bearing. That's going to be fun putting that back together. Ooh. So I sprayed up the barrel just in satin black finish. Also, I decided to just make up a new sticker at home myself. So all I did was on a computer, just copied the manual. It's got a picture of the ignition barrel, so I just copied the lettering position, etc., and printed it out on photo paper and just cut it out using a stamp, just knocking it with a hammer, so it makes a nice sharp edge. Did a couple of tests just to see the differences, and it seems to come up quite well. I just put a couple of coats of lacquer over the top. So that's that. And then also I decided just to pull this apart because it's a bit gummed up, and at the same time sort of just try and clean up the faceplate of the lock. So now comes the fun part of reassembling it all and trying to remember how it goes. That's the important bit, just that, it's difficult to see in there, that copper pin down in there needs to pop out so it locates. So next up we've got to try and get this awkward little, I don't know, wedge, whatever you call it, into that groove down in the bottom there. But at the same time I've got to get a ball bearing on the back of that, so I don't know if this is going to work. That was mighty fiddly. I'm not going to take that out again. Okay, so that's in there. That's a spring. So that little dimple or nipple needs to be sort of pointing in that direction. That goes on there. Next, it's the back plate, which again can only go on one way. So I think it goes that way round. Yep, looking at the picture it goes that way, because then it goes over that nipple thing. And then we've got a couple of screws. That's the backing plate locked in, and we've just got this little contact plate, I suppose you call it, and that goes in, can only go in one way because the size of the little cutouts will only fit in one way, so it just drops in like that. Then we've got the little contact wiper, again only one way. I think it doesn't matter which way it goes, does it? No. And then we've got the actual circuit, or the fly lead. So that goes that way because this little cutout is for the lead itself. So it goes in there, bend it so it goes down fully. And the last bit is the base plate, and again that has a bit of a slot in this pivot point which pushes out the parking lock or parking pin, and that has to line up with the shape of that spigot there. So again that goes that way, I think. It should sit down fully, so it's all engaged, and then we just drop on So these would normally be tamper-proof rivets. I'm not going to bother just popping these Allen cap head bolts. And just do that up, and then we'll just test it. So the locking position works still. And then just turning on and off seems to work. So we'll just test the circuit now, just to make sure that works. So to test the circuit, I'll just flash up the wiring diagram and you just work through the different settings on the ignition barrel. It's pretty straightforward. So start on the off position, and you've got various modes. You've got off, lock and park. They all need to be basically continuity for black and white. So we just got it in the off position. Black is down the bottom there, and it shouldn't work when you've got it in the on position, which is correct. So just work through the wire diagram and you should be good. So I've just got it in park. So park should be black and white closed circuit, and also red and blue and red, which is that one. So it's good. And one last thing, don't forget there's a little wiring bracket that holds this in place. It's not waving around in the wind so much. Mine had broken. It's a very delicate little screw in there. So I've sort of trimmed it off, recut a new hole and sort of bend it. So it's not exactly as per, I think, the original, but it's good to have that at least clamped in place. And then we can put it back on the bike. So a bit of blue Loctite on the threads. Not much. From what I can tell from the wiring diagram or routing, the cable goes off to this side of the bike, which is the right hand side. So next up is just a quick simple cleanup of the throttle cable. So I've just sort of like dismantled as much as I can to expose as much of the parts as possible. Obviously you can't fully take these apart because of the nipples in the end. You've got to desolder the nipples really. Anyway, I'll pull them apart and we'll give them a good clean in the ultrasonic cleaner and see how it comes up. And then they'll need a good lubrication with some oil down the cables to stop them rusting. Now we've cleaned up all the wiring, degreased it all, you want to quickly get oil down the sleeves of the throttle cable. You can buy these things, which are quite good. They're like cable oilers, I suppose you call them. They clamp on, and then you put in one of these holes here. You can squirt WD-40 or even chain lube or stuff like that. But I found really engine oil is better because WD-40 just dries out too quickly, and chain oil or chain lube just makes everything sticky, and dust and grit sticks to that, and then it just seems to get even worse. So I just make a little temporary funnel type thing with gaffer tape, and you just fill it with engine oil. Eventually it'll start dripping out the bottom of the cable. So I've got the cable sort of in the vise, and just, it's a slow process, but eventually you can, I had that full of oil and it's all drained away, and just top it up. Just give it a couple of minutes and it will just seep all the way through nicely. You could use thicker oil, like I suppose gearbox oil, something like that, and that might stay a bit longer. But yeah, it's a quick fix if you haven't got one of these. I'll do that for the other 3 parts of the cable. So you can see very quickly that the oil just wicks along the wire, so that's flooded now inside the cabling. So yeah, it's pretty quick. I mean, it can get a bit messy, it'll leak after a few minutes, but it's a quick way to make sure the cabling is nicely lubricated, because if it's dry, A, it will just rust out, snap, and B, you get a nasty sticking action on your throttle cable. You don't want that. You open up your throttles and they don't snap shut, so always make sure that the cabling is fully lubed up. And I take no ownership of that idea, because I got it from my original Haynes manual, which is probably over 20, 30 years old now. Yeah. And in the routine maintenance section, I was reading one day, this their tip if you want to lubricate cables. Pretty much the same thing, like a plastic bag or something and a zip tie, just to stop it leaking down the sides. And as they say, just leave it overnight. One other job just to look at is underneath the throttle caps. There's an O-ring that sits in there. Obviously tries to create a fairly airtight seal on the top of the carbs. I keep want to say throttle bodies, but no, these are carburetors. And the seals in them, you can see they've gone quite hard and cracked, and there's absolutely no movement in that. Some kits you buy online for the carburetors, including all the replacement bits and bobs, they actually come with these included. The ones I bought, sadly, they didn't. So I've just bought some nitrile rubber, and I think I'll be making a lot of my own gaskets as much as I can for the other bikes. So I'm just going to make in the lathe just some punches and dies, just to cut out these, because I'll probably have to get about 4 or 5 of these. Anyway, it's another small job while the oil is slowly seeping through the cables. So I just machined up the cutter there, and we just put it over there, and hopefully this will work. So that's the OD, and then just to cut the ID, the slightly inner circle, I just made it to fit in there, so it sort of locates it on the center. There you have it. So that just cut out the inner bit. So just see if that fits. If not, we just got to resize these a bit. So there's the cutout. Looks like it fits quite snugly in there. So that's good. Pretty quick. And of course, now you've got a template made. I made about, I don't know, 10 of them for the other bikes. So that's good. So the throttle cables are all cleaned up. Good to go. New seals, everything's lubricated up, so that can go back on the bike. Now, unfortunately, in the next episode we have a bit of bad news. I've discovered something, and yeah, I'll leave you hanging there till next week when I have to go through a small problem that I've discovered. So until next week or next video, take care and see you soon.